Alien bullies stole her letter to Santa. Then a human janitor hand-delivered it. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The corridors of Orbital Station Harmony gleamed under artificial lights, a monument to cooperation floating in the darkness between stars, and they're pushing a maintenance cart laden with cleaning supplies and broken equipment was Ethan Cole, the only human janitor on a station populated by thousands of alien residents. Ethan had been working on Harmony Station for 3 years now. It wasn't glamorous work, and most species barely noticed him as he went about his duties. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having joined only 15 years prior, and they were generally seen as unremarkable, not particularly strong, not especially intelligent by galactic standards, not gifted with natural armor or telepathy, or any of the exotic abilities that other species took for granted, just another species trying to find their place among the stars. He didn't mind the work, though. There was a certain satisfaction in taking something dirty or broken and making it clean and functional again. Plus the pay was decent, and it allowed him to send money back to his sister's family on Earth. That was what mattered. It was the 3rd week of December by Earth's calendar, and Ethan had decorated his small maintenance closet with a few modest Christmas decorations, a small artificial tree, some tinsel, and a string of lights that blinked in cheerful patterns. Most aliens didn't understand the holiday, but a few of the other human workers on the station appreciated the gesture. It reminded them of home. Ethan was emptying a waste receptacle in Sector 7, humming an old Christmas carol to himself when he heard raised voices echoing down the corridor. He paused, listening. One voice was high and trembling, clearly distressed. Other voices were deeper, mocking, punctuated by harsh laughter. He abandoned his cart and moved quickly toward the sound, rounding a corner to find a scene that made his jaw tighten. 3 Vexarian youths, each standing nearly 7 ft tall, with scaled skin that shimmered blue and green under the lights, had cornered a small figure against the wall. The victim was a Pix, barely 3 feet tall, her large eyes wet with tears. The Pix were a diminutive species, peaceful and gentle, known throughout the galaxy for their kindness and their intricate artistic abilities. The little girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old. By human standards, she was clutching something against her chest, and the Vexorians were trying to take it from her. One of them made a grab for it, and she twisted away, her small voice crying out in protest. Ethan felt something hot flare in his chest. He'd seen bullies before on Earth and here on the station. The species might change, but the behavior was always the same, picking on someone smaller, weaker, unable to defend themselves. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the corridor like a blade. The janitor said with authority, "That's enough, leave her alone." The 3 Vexorans turned to look at him, their expressions shifting from cruel amusement to disdain. The tallest one, clearly the leader, looked Ethan up and down with obvious contempt. The leader sneered, "This is not your concern, human. Go back to your mops and buckets." Ethan moved closer, positioning himself between the Vexorians and the child. Up close, the size difference was even more pronounced. Each of them outweighed him by at least 50 lb, and had natural weapons, claws that could tear through metal if they chose, but Ethan had learned long ago that size wasn't everything in a confrontation. He spoke calmly but firmly, "I'm making it my concern. The girl clearly doesn't want to talk to you, so I suggest you move along." The second Victorian, stockier than the leader, laughed. It was an unpleasant sound, like rocks grinding together. The stocky one said mockingly, "Or what you'll clean us to death. Everyone knows humans are weak. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. You're the janitors of the galaxy." The third Victorian, thinner with particularly sharp-looking in claws, moved a circle around Ethan, trying to get at the girl. Ethan shifted his position, keeping himself between them. Ethan said evenly, "I'm going to ask you one more time, walk away." The leader's eyes narrowed dangerously, and he took a step forward, looming over Ethan. His clawed hand came up, not quite threatening but not friendly either. The leader growled, "Make us little human." What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but Ethan had learned these moves from his father, who'd been a Marine, and from years of navigating rough neighborhoods as a kid. When the leader moved to shove him aside, Ethan didn't fight force with force. Instead, he used the Vexarian's own momentum against him, stepping aside at the last instant and guiding the leader's overbalanced form directly into the wall, with a metallic thud that echoed down the corridor. Before the other two could react, Ethan had already moved. He swept the stocky one's legs out from under him with a quick kick, sending him crashing to the deck. The thin one lunged, claws extended, but Ethan caught his arm, twisted, and used a basic joint lock to pin him face first against the wall. Corridor fell silent except for the heavy breathing of the 3 Vexarians, all of whom were now either on the ground or immobilized. Ethan held the thin one in place for a moment longer, then released him and stepped back. Hands open and non-threatening, he spoke quietly but with steel in his voice. "Here's what you're going to learn today. Humans might not have claws or scales or telepathy, but we've been dealing with bullies for our entire history, and we've gotten pretty good at stopping them. Now I'm going to count to 5. And if you're still here when I'm done, I'm going to file a formal complaint with station security, and I've got the surveillance footage to back it up. Your families will be contacted. Your behavior will be documented. Is that what you want?" The leader pulled himself off the wall, his expression a mixture of shock, anger, and something that might have been embarrassment. The 3 youths exchanged glances, and Ethan could see the calculation happening behind their eyes. They were used to being the biggest, the toughest, the ones who could take what they wanted. But this human, this janitor, had just dismantled all 3 of them without breaking a sweat. Ethan began counting. 1, 2, 3. The leader made a sharp gesture to his companions, and all 3 of them retreated down the corridor, trying to maintain some shred of dignity as they went. The thin one looked back once, confusion and curiosity replacing the earlier contempt. Then they were gone, their footsteps fading into the distance. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding, and turned to the little pig's girl. She was still pressed against the wall, her large eyes now filled with wonder rather than fear. Whatever she'd been clutching was still held tight against her chest. He knelt down to her level, making himself smaller and less intimidating. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "All The steel from moments before melted away. Ethan asked softly, "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" The girl shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, they tried to take my letter, but I wouldn't let them." She held out what she'd been protecting, and Ethan saw that it was an envelope slightly crumpled from being gripped so tightly. The address on the front was written in careful, childish handwriting. It said, "To Santa Claus, North Pole, Earth." Ethan felt his heart twist. He'd seen the handful of human children on the station writing letters to Santa. Tradition their parents tried to maintain even so far from home, but this was a Pix. How did she even know about Santa Claus? He asked gently. "You wrote a letter to Santa?" The girl nodded, her large eyes shining with earnest hope. "My friend Mia told me about him. She's human and she lives in Sector 5. She said Santa brings presents to good children at Christmas and that he's magic, so he can go anywhere, even to space stations. I wanted to ask him for something special, so I wrote a letter, but those boys said humans lie about everything and Santa isn't real. And they tried to take my letter and rip it up." Ethan felt that hot anger flare again, but he pushed it down. Bullies were gone. What mattered now was this little girl and her belief in something magical. He spoke carefully, choosing his words. "Well, I happen to know that Santa is very real, and he definitely delivers to space stations. But you know, the mail system between here and Earth's North Pole can be a bit slow. How about I make sure your letter gets to him personally? I'm actually going to Earth next week for the holidays. I could deliver it for you." The girl's entire face lit up with joy, so pure and bright that Ethan felt his eyes sting slightly. She carefully handed him the envelope, treating it like the precious thing it was. She said, "Hopefully you would do that." "Really? You promise it will get to Santa?" Ethan took the letter gently and tucked it into his shirt pocket right over his heart. He promised solemnly, "I absolutely promise. And you know what? I have a feeling Santa is going to be very impressed by your letter. Anyone brave enough to stand up to 3 bullies to protect, it must have something pretty important to say." The girl's smile was like a sunrise, and she surprised Ethan by throwing her small arms around his neck in a hug. He returned it gently, careful not to squeeze too hard. Pigs were fragile, their bones hollow like birds. She whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Janitor, you're a hero." Ethan chuckled, pulling back so he could look at her. "Just Ethan is fine, and I'm not a hero, just someone who doesn't like bullies." "What's your name?" she replied. "Leela." "My name is Leia." He smiled at her. "Well, Leia, it's very nice to meet you, and I promise your letter will get to Santa. But right now, where are your parents? Should you be wandering around the station alone?" Ila's expression grew a bit sheepish. "I was supposed to be in the education center, but I needed to mail my letter, and I thought I could get to the postal station and back before anyone noticed, but I got lost. And then those boys found me." Ethan stood, offering her his hand. "How about I walk you back to the education center? I know every corridor on the station. We'll have you back in no time." Leia took his hand trustingly, and together they walked through the gleaming corridors of Harmony Station. As they walked, Leia chattered happily about her friend Mia, about the Christmas decorations she'd seen in the human quarters, about the wonderful things she'd heard about Earth's winter holiday. Ethan listened, making encouraging sounds, his heart warming at Her enthusiasm when they reached the education center, Leia's teacher, a pix adult with graying fur around her muzzle, rushed forward with obvious relief. The teacher exclaimed, "Leila, we're so worried. Where have you been?" Before Leia could answer, Ethan spoke. I found her in Sector 7. She'd gotten a bit turned around, but she's safe now." The teacher looked at Ethan with gratitude, her large eyes soft. "Thank you so much. We were about to call security. Illa, you know better than to leave without permission." Leia looked down at her feet, properly chastened. "I'm sorry, Teacher Vara. I just needed to mail my letter to Santa, and I thought I could do it quickly." Teacher Vara sighed, clearly torn between relief and the need to discipline. Ethan knelt down. Once more catching Illa's gaze, he said reassuringly, "Remember, I'm taking care of your letter. It's going to get to Santa, I promise, but next time you want to mail something, ask for help, okay? The station is big, and it's easy to get lost." Leia nodded seriously. "I will." "Thank you, Ethan." As Ethan walked back to his maintenance card, he pulled the letter from his pocket and looked at it. The envelope was decorated with drawings of stars and what he thought might be a sleigh, though it was hard to tell given Illa's artistic skills. The address was written with such care, each letter formed slowly and deliberately. He thought about opening it, reading what she'd written, but that felt like a violation of privacy. Whatever Leia had asked Santa for was between her and him. Well, and Ethan now, since he'd promised to deliver it, the weight of that promise settled on his shoulders. He told a little girl he'd make sure Santa got her letter, but Santa Claus wasn't real. He was a story, a legend, a beautiful lie that parents told their children to bring magic into the world. Except Ethan thought maybe that was the point. Maybe the magic of Santa wasn't about a literal man in a red suit delivering presents. Maybe it was about the kindness of people, making sure that children's wishes were heard, that their hopes were acknowledged, that someone cared enough to try to make their dreams come true. An idea began to form in his mind. It was crazy, probably impossible, and would require help from people he barely knew. But as he looked at that carefully addressed envelope with its childish drawings, Ethan made a decision. He was going to make sure Illa's letter got answered, not just delivered, but answered. The next day, Ethan sought out Mia's family. He found them in the human residential sector, a small apartment that smelled like cinnamon and pine. Mia's mother, Emily Parker, invited him in with curious hospitality. Ethan explained the situation, showing her the letter, telling her about Leia and the Bullies, and his promise. Emily listened with growing emotion, her hand covering her mouth when he described the little pigs girl protecting her letter. Emily said softly, "That sweet girl, Mia talks about her all the time. They're best friends. Leia comes over to play, and she's always so curious about Earth traditions. Last month Mia told her about Santa Claus, and Leia was absolutely enchanted by the idea." Ethan asked, "I know this is a lot to ask, but I need help. I promised her that Santa would get this letter, and I think we can make that happen, not just for Leia, but for all the kids on this station who still believe. Would you help me?" Emily's eyes lit up with understanding and excitement. "You want to become Santa?" Ethan shook his head quickly. "Not me. I'm too young. Santa is supposed to be old and jolly, but I thought maybe if we could organize Something, get the human community involved, create a real Christmas experience here on the station. We could set up a place where kids could visit Santa, and we'd make sure every letter got answered. Emily was already nodding, her mind clearly racing with possibilities. My husband Nathan works in the station's recreation department. He could help us get space approved, and I know at least a dozen families who'd volunteer to make this happen. But, Ethan, we'd need someone to be Santa. Someone who'd be convincing. Ethan smiled. I think I know just the person. That person was Marcus Dean, a retired human merchant marine who'd settled the station with his wife. Marcus was in his 70s, had a naturally jolly disposition, and most importantly had a magnificent white beard that he'd been growing for the past 10 years. When Ethan and Emily approached him with their plan, Marcus' eyes twinkled with delight. Marcus said warmly, I'll do it. Absolutely. I always thought I'd be too old to do anything meaningful anymore, but this is important. Making children believe in magic, in kindness, in hope. There's nothing more important than that. Over the next week, the human community on Harmony Station mobilized with impressive efficiency. Nathan secured a large recreation room in Sector 3, normally used for community gatherings. The moment the approval came through, volunteers swarmed the space. With determination and creativity, Emily organized teams with military precision, assigning tasks based on skills and availability. Within hours, they'd sketched out a complete floor plan for their North Pole outpost. The transformation was remarkable. Volunteers brought every Christmas decoration they owned from their personal quarters. Strings of lights in red, green, white, and gold were carefully wound around support beams and railings. Synthetic tinsel, precious because it had been carried across light years from Earth, was draped with care. Someone discovered that if you mixed certain recycled foam compounds available from the station's matter synthesizers, you could create something that looked remarkably like snow. Soon, drifts of white covered the floor along the edges of the room, and children helped pack snowballs that would never melt. A man named Derek Vaughn, who'd been a carpenter before joining the station crew, took charge of building Santa's throne and sleigh. He worked in the corner of the room, measuring and cutting materials salvaged from old furniture and in used storage containers. His teenage daughter, Claire, helped him sand and paint, transforming scrap into something magical. The sleigh took shape over 3 days, its curved runners painted glossy red, gold trim added with painstaking care. They even fashioned reindeer from wire and fabric, positioning them as if ready to take flight. Meanwhile, a group led by Sarah Morgan worked on Santa's costume. None of them were professional seamstresses, but they pulled their knowledge and skills. Red fabric proved difficult to source until someone remembered the old emergency blankets in storage. With permission from the quartermaster, they repurposed several, cutting and sewing them into a suit that would fit Marcus. The white trim came from synthetic fur, used in cold weather gear. Someone donated their white gloves. Another person contributed black boots that, with some polish, looked perfect for Santa. The teenage volunteers who'd signed up to be elves threw themselves into costume creation with enthusiasm. They used green fabric, red accents, and constructed pointed hats from cardboard covered in felt. Each elf designed their own costume, resulting in a delightfully chaotic array of styles that somehow worked together. They practiced their roles, deciding who would manage the line of children, who would assist Santa, who would distribute presents, and who would oversee the various activity areas they were setting up. Emily's daughter, Zoe Franklin, a bright girl of 16, took the lead on organizing the letter response system. She created a database using a borrowed data pad, cataloging every letter that came in by child's name, species, age, and wish. She color-coded them by complexity: green for simple wishes that could be easily fulfilled, yellow for wishes that would require coordination with other departments or families, red for wishes that seemed impossible but deserved their best effort. The workshop area became a hive of activity. Adults and teenagers worked side by side using the station's fabricators to create toys, games, and gifts. When the fabricators couldn't produce what was needed, they got creative. Someone carved wooden toys by hand, working late into the night to create miniature spaceships and animals. Others programmed simple games onto data chips that could be played on standard terminals. A group of women knitted stuffed creatures using yarn they've been saving for personal projects, each one unique and made with love. For the more complex wishes, teams formed to tackle specific challenges. The rain room request sent Nathan and 3 engineers into deep planning sessions. They identified an unused environment control chamber in Sector 8-1, originally designed for testing atmospheric conditions. With some modifications, they could program it to simulate rainfall. It took 2 days of calibration, adjusting humidity, temperature, and precipitation patterns. But they finally got it working when they tested it standing in a small room, while water fell from overhead misters. In a gentle shower, Emily actually cried with joy at what they'd accomplished. But the most important part was the letters. Ethan had put up notices throughout the station in every language spoken there, inviting all children to write letters to Santa and bring them to the North Pole outpost, as they christened the decorated recreation room. The response was overwhelming and unexpected. The first day the notices went up, only a handful of human children showed up with letters, their parents looking nostalgic and pleased. But then something remarkable happened. Alien children began appearing, clutching carefully written letters, their parents looking curious and slightly bused. Word spread through the schools and residential sectors. Children talked to each other across species lines, sharing the exciting news that Santa was coming to Harmony Station. A young Century girl arrived, with her father carrying a letter written in precise flowing script. Century were known for their meticulous nature, and her letter reflected that. With decorated borders and perfect penmanship, she wanted to see actual rain because her species came from an arid world and she'd only ever read about water falling from the sky. Twin Rhine boys, identical in their scaled appearance, brought a joint letter asking for books about Earth mythology. Their species valued knowledge above all else, and they become fascinated by human stories of gods and heroes. Their mother explained that they'd been studying human culture in school and wanted to learn more. A tiny Pix boy, even smaller than Leia, had to be lifted up to place his letter in the collection box. His wish was simple but heartbreaking. He wanted a friend. He'd been born on the station and had never met another Pix child his age. The isolation weighed on him despite his parents' best efforts to provide companionship. Even some young Vexorians came, though often with their parents hovering nearby, clearly skeptical. One Vexorian girl, younger than the three who bullied Leia, asked for a pet. Her species typically kept aggressive guard animals, but she wanted something small and gentle, like the cats she'd seen in human quarters. Her father looked uncomfortable with the request, but he let her submit the letter anyway. Children from dozens of species brought letters, each one a window into their hearts, their hopes, their innocent belief that maybe, just maybe, someone would listen and care. The volunteers worked day and night to catalog them, all to read each one carefully, to understand what was being asked. Some wishes were simple toys or games or treats easily provided. Those letters got green marks in Zoe's database. Others required more creativity. A VR child wanted to experience music the way humans did, but Valdine hearing was significantly different from human hearing, operating on different frequency ranges. That letter got a yellow mark, and a team formed to work with the station's audio engineers. They eventually created a special translation program that converted human music into frequencies the Valdine could fully appreciate, then loaded it onto a portable device. A human boy wanted his military father, stationed on a ship 3 months away, to come home for Christmas. That was marked red, seemingly impossible, but Emily personally contacted the military liaison office and explained the situation. They couldn't bring the father home, but they arranged for a live video call on Christmas Day, plus a recorded message that could be played whenever the boy missed his dad. The father also sent a care package that would arrive just in time, filled with small gifts and letters he'd written. The Pix boy, who wanted a friend, presented a unique challenge. You couldn't fabricate friendship, but Ethan had an idea. He contacted the Pix diplomatic mission on the station and explained the situation. It turned out there were 2 other Pix families with young children living in different sectors, families that didn't know about each other. Within days, a Pix parents group had formed and playdates were being arranged. The boy would have his friends. The most difficult letters, the ones marked red, often couldn't be fulfilled exactly as asked, but the volunteers tried to honor the spirit of each wish. A Zenturi child who wanted her sick parent to get better received assurance that the medical team was doing everything possible, plus a visit from Santa at the hospital ward. The team also arranged for a family counselor to help them process their fears and feelings. A human girl wanted her parents to stop fighting. That letter led to Emily quietly contacting the Family Services Office, which reached out to offer couples counseling. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was support they desperately needed and hadn't known how to ask for. Some wishes were so pure they made the volunteers cry. A Valdine boy asked for everyone on the station to be happy. A human girl wanted no child to ever be hungry again. A Pix wished for peace throughout the galaxy. These cosmic wishes couldn't be granted with gifts or arrangements, but Marcus made sure to address each one personally when those children visited Santa, talking to them about how they could help make their wishes come true through their own actions and kindness. As the days passed, word of the North Pole outpost spread throughout the Station like wildfire, it started with children talking at school there. Excitement infectious, then parents began discussing it in common areas, break rooms and dining facilities. Soon species who'd never heard of Christmas became curious, drawn by the obvious joy the project was generating. Ambassador Talais, a distinguished Valdrine diplomat who served as a cultural liaison, made a formal visit to observe the preparations. Ethan was adjusting lights when the ambassador arrived accompanied by 2 aides. He expected skepticism or confusion, but instead found genuine interest. Ambassador Talais walked slowly through the evolving winter wonderland, taking in every detail with the careful attention his species was known for. The ambassador spoke thoughtfully. Remarkable, this holiday of yours, Christmas, it is about communal gift, giving and celebration of light during dark times. Yes, my species has something similar, though we celebrated differently, the festival of first dawn, commemorating when our ancestors first saw our binary suns rise together. Perhaps the fundamental need to mark hope and renewal is universal. Ethan paused in his work, struck by the observation. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. Different traditions, same core need to remind ourselves that dark times pass, that we're not alone, that there are things worth celebrating. Ambassador Talais nodded slowly, his scaled face reflecting the colorful lights. I am authorizing a cultural exchange grant from the V. Rhine Educational Fund, 5,000 credits to support this project. If your Christmas can bring our various peoples together, help them understand each other better, that serves a diplomatic purpose as important as any treaty I might negotiate. The grant allowed them to expand their plans significantly. They could afford better materials, more gifts, and most importantly, they could hire professional counselors to support families dealing with difficult wishes. The ambassador's public endorsement also lent legitimacy to the project, encouraging other skeptical species to participate. A Vexarian merchant named Torvis, who ran one of the station's largest supply shops, initially dismissed the whole thing as silly human sentimentality, but when his daughter came home from school talking excitedly about writing to Santa, begging to participate, he reconsidered. He showed up at the North Pole outpost one evening as volunteers were working, watching them transform scrap into something beautiful. Torvis approached Ethan, his massive frame seeming less intimidating as he looked around with grudging approval. My daughter has not stopped talking about this for 3 days. She wrote a letter asking for a gentle pet, something soft. In my culture, we value strength, aggression, but watching her excitement, I realize I've been teaching her to be what I think she should be, not listening to who she actually is. Ethan listened carefully, understanding. This was difficult for the proud Vexarian to admit. Every parent wants the best for their child. Sometimes we just have to adjust our definition of best. Torvis rumbled agreement. I am donating fabrics from my shop, the good ones, not the cheap synthetic, and I will sponsor 5 families who cannot afford gifts for their children. Anonymously, I have a reputation to maintain. Ethan smiled. Your secret is safe with us. As Torvis left, Ethan reflected on how this project was changing more than just children's lives. It was shifting perspectives, opening minds, creating connections that transcended species boundaries. Parents from different worlds were working together, learning about each other's cultures, finding common ground in their shared love for their children. The education centers throughout the station incorporated Christmas into their cultural studies curriculum. Teacher Vara, Leia's instructor, organized a series of presentations where human children and parents explained the history and meaning of various Christmas traditions. The other students listened with rapt attention as they learned about decorated trees, stockings hung by fireplaces, candy canes, and the legend of Santa Claus. But the most powerful moment came when a human parent explained that Christmas was ultimately about hope, giving, and love, about taking the darkest, coldest time of year and filling it with light and warmth, about remembering that material wealth mattered less than the connections between people. Those themes resonated across species lines. Every culture had variations on those values, even if they expressed them differently. A group of century elders known for their philosophical nature visited the North Pole outpost to observe and discuss. They spent an entire afternoon talking with Ethan, Emily, and Marcus about the psychological and social impacts of communal celebration, about the role of myths and legends in child development, about the importance of rituals that brought communities together. They concluded that humans, despite being newcomers to the galactic community, had much to teach about social cohesion. One elder, her scales faded to silver with age, spoke with the weight of centuries of accumulated wisdom. We century pride ourselves on logic, on reason, on the pursuit of knowledge, but we have lost something in our focus on the intellectual. We have forgotten the importance of wonder, of magic, of believing in beautiful impossibilities. Your Christmas reminds us that there is wisdom and joy, that hope itself is a form of intelligence. We thank you for this lesson. The station security chief, a gruff Valdrine named Commander Rax, initially viewed the project with suspicion, concerned it might cause crowding, conflicts, or safety issues. He assigned extra patrols during the setup and planning phases, but one evening doing his rounds, he stopped to watch a group of children from 5 different species playing together in the snow area, laughing and building snowmen despite having no shared language beyond the universal tongue of play. Commander Rex watched for a long time, then quietly told Ethan, "In my 20 years running station security, I have broken up more conflicts between species than I care to count. Tensions run high when so many different peoples live in close quarters, but this, what you have created here, this is the most effective peacekeeping I have ever witnessed. Continue your work, you have my full support." The medical staff reported a measurable decrease in stress-related visits during the project. Dr. Silvex, the station's chief medical officer, Valdrine with expertise in comparative psychology, began documenting the phenomenon for a medical journal. She interviewed families, tracked mood indicators, and analyzed the data with scientific rigor. Her preliminary findings showed that children involved in the Christmas project exhibited lower anxiety levels, improved social bonding across species lines, and increased expressions of empathy and kindness. Parents reported feeling more connected to the community, less isolated, more hopeful. Even adults not directly involved but aware of the project showed improved mood indicators. The doctor concluded that communal positive events had measurable beneficial impacts on population well-being, a finding that could inform station policies going forward. Throughout all of this, Ethan kept Illa's letter close. He'd read it, finally needing to know what she'd asked for in order to make it happen. The letter was written in slightly stilted standard galactic, the language taught throughout the galaxy, mixed with a few Pix words. It read, "Dear Santa Claus, my name is Leia, and I am 7 years old. I live on Harmony Station with my mama and papa. My best friend Mia told me about you and about Christmas. She said you bring presents to good children. I have tried very hard to be good. I help my mama with chores and I study hard in education center. Santa, I do not want toys or candy. I only want one thing. I want my mama to not be sad anymore. Papa died last year in an accident and mama cries when she thinks I am sleeping. I wish you could bring Papa back, but Mia said even Santa cannot do that, so instead can you please help mama smile again? That is all I want for Christmas. Also, if it is not too much trouble, could you tell the mean boys on the station to be nicer? They are always mean to smaller kids. Thank you, Santa. I will leave you cookies if I can figure out how to make them. Love, Leia." Ethan had to step away. After reading it, his vision blurred with tears. Here was a child who'd lost her father, whose mother was drowning in grief, and all she wanted was for her mother to be happy again. She didn't ask for herself, she asked for someone else. He showed the letter to Emily and Nathan, and the three of them sat in silence for a long moment. Emily finally spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "We have to do something. This can't just be another present under a tree. This has to be real." Nathan nodded slowly. "I know Illa's mother, Nessa. She works in the agricultural section. She's been going through the motions since her husband died doing her job, but there's no light in her eyes anymore. I don't know how we give that back to her." Ethan thought hard, the wheels in his mind turning. Leia said her father died in an accident. What happened? Nathan explained. Engineering mishap. He was a maintenance worker like you. Actually, a plasma conduit ruptured unexpectedly. He managed to seal it and save the section, but the exposure was too much. He died a hero, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. An idea struck Ethan, wild and potentially wonderful. What if we got the station commander to officially recognize his heroism? A Astumus medal, a ceremony, something to show Leia and Nessa that her father's sacrifice mattered, that he's remembered. And what if we establish something in his name? Scholarship fund for children who have lost parents, something that would help others and keep his memory alive. Emily grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. That's perfect. That's exactly what they need, not to forget him, but to remember him in a way that honors what he did. Over the next days, they worked even harder. Nathan used his connections to bring the idea to Station Commander Velis, a distinguished Valdrine with a reputation for fairness and compassion. Velis listened to the story, read Leia's letter, and without hesitation agreed to hold a ceremony. More than that, he pledged the station's support for the scholarship fund and challenged other departments to contribute. Meanwhile, the North Pole outpost was ready for its grand opening. The room looked like something out of a storybook, all twinkling lights and festive colors. Marcus had practiced his Santa voice and manner, perfecting the jolly laugh and kind demeanor. The elf volunteers were ready with lists of every child who'd written a letter and what they'd wished. For on December 20th, the North Pole outpost officially opened. The line of children waiting to see Santa stretched down the corridor, a rainbow of alien species all chattering excitedly. Parents accompanied them, many looking bemused but happy to see their children so enthusiastic. Ethan, wearing an elf costume that Emily's daughter had made, stood at the entrance to help manage the crowd. He watched his child after child went in to meet Santa, their faces glowing with wonder. Marcus was perfect in the role, listening carefully to each child, asking questions, laughing at their jokes, and promising to do his best to fulfill their wishes. When Leia arrived with her mother, Ethan felt his heart jump. He'd been waiting for this moment. Illa's eyes went wide as she took in the winter wonderland, her small hand gripping her mother's tightly. Illa breathed in awe. Mama, look, it's the North Pole, it's real. Nessa looked around with tired eyes, but Ethan could see a faint smile touching her lips at her daughter's joy. He approached them gently. He greeted them. Hello, Leia. I'm so glad you came. Santa is waiting to see you. Leia looked up at him, recognition dawning in her eyes. Ethan, you're an elf. Ethan smiled and knelt down. Just for today, helping out Santa. Since there's so many kids to see, are you ready to meet him? La nodded eagerly, but then she paused, looking uncertain. Will he remember my letter? The one you delivered? Ethan's smile widened. Oh, he definitely remembers. In fact, I think he has something very special planned. Come on. He led Leia and Nessa through the wonderland, past the sleigh and the fake snow and the mountains of wrapped presents. Other children were playing in designated areas supervised by volunteer elves. Finally, they reached Santa's throne, where Marcus sat in all his red suit glory. Marcus' eyes twinkled as he saw approaching, and he gestured for her to come closer with a welcoming wave. Santa spoke in a deep, warm voice. Ah, Leia. Come here, dear child. I've been waiting to meet you. Leia approached shyly, and Marcus lifted her gently onto his knee. Nessa stood nearby, her expression a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. She clearly hadn't expected this level of production. Marcus continued. I received your letter, Leia. Ethan delivered it to me personally, and I have to tell you, in all my years of reading letters from children across the galaxy, yours was one of the most special I've ever received. Illa's eyes went wide. Really? Santa nodded. Seriously, really? Most children ask for things for themselves, and that's perfectly fine, but you asked for something for someone else. You asked for your mama to be happy again. That shows a beautiful, kind heart. Tears began to form in Nessa's eyes, her hand going to her mouth. Ethan stood close by, ready to support her if needed. Santa spoke gently. Now, Leia, I have to be honest with you. I cannot bring your papa back. I wish I could, but some things are beyond even magic. However, I can do something else. I can make sure that your papa is remembered as the hero he was, and I can help your mama know that you both are not alone, that there's a whole community here ready to support you. He gestured, and Station Commander Velas stepped forward from where he'd been waiting just out of sight. The vulgar commander was an imposing figure, tall and dignified, his official uniform gleaming with medals. Nessa's eyes went wide with shock. Commander Velas spoke with formal gravity. Nessa, daughter of Pixon, and Leia, daughter of Nessa. it is my honor to present you with the Station Harmony Medal of Heroism, awarded posthumously to Trav Pixon for his brave actions in containing the plasma breach of Sector 9. His quick thinking and selfless sacrifice saved 17 lives. His name will be inscribed in the station's Hall of Heroes, and his story will be taught to all new engineers as an example of the highest ideals of duty and courage. Velis produced a beautiful medal on a ribbon, the medal gleaming gold and silver. He carefully placed it around Leia's neck, then produced a second one and offered it to Nessa with both hands, a gesture of deep respect in Pix's culture. Continued. Furthermore, the Station Council has voted to establish the Trax Memorial Scholarship Fund, which will provide educational support for any child on the station who has lost a parent in the line of duty. Your husband's legacy will help other families for generations to come. Nessa broke down completely, tears streaming down her face as she took the medal with trembling hands. Leia slipped off Santa's knee and rushed to her mother, hugging her tightly. Around them, other families who'd been watching the ceremony had fallen silent, many of them moved to tears as well. Santa Marcus stepped down from his throne and approached Nessa, his voice gentle and kind. Your husband was a hero, Nessa, and you are raising a remarkable daughter. She has his kindness and his courage. You should be very proud. Nessa looked up at him, at Ethan, at Commander Velis, and finally at her daughter. When she spoke, her voice was choked with emotion, but also for the first time in a long time, filled with something like hope. Nessa said softly, "Thank you all of you. I had forgotten that there was still kindness in the universe, that people still cared. You've given me back something I thought I'd lost forever." Leia hugged her mother tighter, then turned to Santa with joy radiating from her entire being. "Santa, you did it. You made Mama smile, and you remembered Papa." Marcus smiled, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Of course I did, dear one. That's what Christmas is all about, remembering those we love, helping those who need it, and spreading kindness wherever we can. And Leia, I want you to remember something very important. Your Papa might not be here physically, but he's always with you, in your heart, in your memories, in every kind thing you do. That's how we keep the people we love alive, by living the way they taught us to live." The ceremony concluded with Commander Velis presenting the official documents for the scholarship fund, which already had contributions from dozens of departments and private citizens. The human community had rallied, but so had many aliens who'd been touched by the story. Even some Vexorans had contributed, including the parents of the 3 youths who'd bullied Leia, apparently as an apology. As the day went on, more children came to see Santa. Each one received personal attention, and each one's wishes were addressed as thoughtfully as possible. Not every wish could be granted perfectly, but every child left knowing that someone had listened, that someone cared, that their hopes mattered. The rain room was a huge success, with alien children squealing with delight as water fell from the sky. For the first time in their lives, the presents were distributed, each one carefully chosen or created to match what the child had asked for, and through it all, volunteers in elf costumes worked tirelessly to ensure everything ran smoothly. On Christmas Eve, the North Pole Outpost held a special celebration. All the families who participated were invited along with anyone else on the station who wanted to attend. The recreation room was packed with dozens of species, all gathered together in a spirit of joy and fellowship. Marcus, still in his Santa costume, stood before the crowd and spoke about the meaning of Christmas. He talked about how it was a holiday from Earth, yes, but that its message was universal: kindness, generosity, community, hope. These were values that every species could embrace regardless of where they came from or what they believed. He concluded by saying, this holiday season, we've seen something wonderful happen on this station. We've seen different species come together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. We've seen the best of what we can be when we care for each other, and I hope that this isn't just a Christmas miracle, but the start of something that continues all year round. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, the sound of cacophony of different vocal ranges and expressions of joy. Ethan, standing at the back of the room, felt a sense of profound satisfaction. They'd done it. They'd taken one little girl's letter and turned it into something that touched the entire station. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and the volunteers were cleaning up, Leia found Ethan. She was holding her mother's hand, and both of them looked lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Leia said earnestly, Ethan, I wanted to say thank you. You kept your promise. You got my letter to Santa, and he made Mama smile. Again, Ethan knelt down, looking at her seriously. La, can I tell you a secret? She nodded, leaning in close behind her. Nessa watched with curious eyes. Ethan spoke softly. Santa couldn't have done any of this without help. There's magic in Christmas, yes, but it's not the magic of one person flying around the world in a sleigh. It's the magic of people caring about each other, of communities coming together, of kindness being passed from one person to another. Your letter started all of this. Your love for your mama, your kind heart. That's the real magic. Leia thought about this for a moment, her young mind processing the information. Then she smiled, a wise smile that seemed too old for her years. She said, so Santa is all of us, everyone who helps and cares. Ethan nodded. Exactly, and that means the magic never has to end as long as we keep being kind to each other. Leia hugged him tightly, and Nessa placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch light but filled with gratitude. Nessa spoke quietly. Thank you, Ethan. You saved us, not just today, but from drowning in our grief. You reminded us that there's still beauty in the world, still reasons to hope. I'll never forget what you've done. As Ethan watched them leave, Leia's hand in her mother's, both of them standing a little taller, he felt a presence beside him. Eiley had come to stand next to him, her own eyes bright with happy tears. Emily said warmly, you did a good thing. Here, Ethan, you took a simple promise to a child and turned it into something that changed lives. That's pretty remarkable for a janitor. Ethan smiled, watching the last families filter out of the North Pole outpost. I think that's the whole point, isn't it? It doesn't matter what your job is or where you come from. Anyone can make a difference. If they care enough to try. Humans might not have claws or telepathy or scales, but we have the ability to care, to empathize, to go out of our way to help someone who needs it. That's our superpower. Emily laughed. Humanity, putting the heart back in the cold vacuum of space. Marcus joined them, pulling off his Santa beard with a sigh of relief. Lord, this thing itches, but it was worth it. Did you see those kids' faces? That's what life is about, right? There, the three of them stood together, looking at the winter wonderland they'd created from nothing but determination and care. Tomorrow they'd take it all down, return the room to its normal function, but the impact of what they'd done would last much longer. Word of the Christmas celebration spread throughout the entire station and even beyond. Other stations heard about it and began planning their own holiday events, adapted to their own diverse populations. The scholarship fund in TRA's name grew beyond anyone's expectations, eventually expanding to help not just children who'd lost parents, but any family facing hardship. The three Vexarian youths who bullied Leia found themselves brought before their parents, and Commander Velis, after security footage of the incident was reviewed, their punishment was community service, specifically helping maintain the station's public areas. They were assigned to work under Ethan's supervision. At first they were resentful, but Ethan didn't lecture them or make them feel small. Instead, he showed them the dignity in maintenance, work in keeping spaces clean and functional, in serving the community. Over time, the leader, whose name was Vex, began to ask questions. Why had Ethan helped the Pix girl? Wasn't she just a weak species not worth defending? Ethan's answer was simple. Ethan explained patiently, strength isn't about how big you are or what natural weapons you have. Strength is about using whatever power you have to protect people who need protecting. The weak need defending, not bullying. And here's the thing, Vex, someday you're going to be in a situation where you're the one who needs help. When that day comes, you're going to hope that someone strong enough steps up for you, be the person you'd want to meet on your worst day. That conversation stuck with Vex. Months later, Ethan heard that Vex had stopped a group of older students from harassing a Zenturi child. When asked why, Vex simply said he was trying to be the person he'd want to meet on his worst day. The cycle of kindness continued. As for Ethan, he continued his work as a janitor, but with a new recognition. People throughout the station knew his name now, knew what he'd done. Some called him a hero, but he always deflected that. He would say humbly, I'm just a janitor who kept a promise to a little girl. Anyone would have done the same, but that wasn't quite true. And he knew it. Not everyone would have done the same. It took someone who saw the value in keeping promises, who understood that the smallest person's hope was just as important as the greatest leader's decree. It took someone who believed that magic was real, not in the supernatural sense, but in the very human sense of caring enough to make impossible things happen. On Christmas Day, Ethan was back on Earth, visiting his sister's family as planned. They lived in a small house in Montana, snow covering the ground in a white blanket. His nephew and niece tore into their presence with gleeful abandon, while his sister and brother-in-law watched with tired but happy eyes. His sister asked curiously, So how are things on the station? Same old routine. Ethan smiled, thinking of Illa's letter still tucked in his belongings, a memento of something magical. Actually, this Christmas was pretty special. I helped deliver a letter to Santa. His brother-in-law laughed. Bit old for that, aren't you? But Ethan just smiled wider. You're never too old to believe in magic, especially the kind we make ourselves. That night, as snow fell softly outside, and his family slept peacefully, Ethan stood by the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, Harmony Station orbited in the darkness, home to thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. And on that station, a little pig's girl and her mother were learning to smile again, wrapped in a community that cared, supported by a legacy of heroism, and touched by the magic of Christmas. Ethan had learned something important over the past weeks. Humans might be new to the galactic stage, might lack the impressive natural abilities of other species, might be seen as just another ordinary race trying to find their place among the stars. But humans had something special, something that couldn't be quantified or easily explained. They had an enormous capacity for kindness, an ability to care about others even when there was no benefit to themselves, a willingness to go to extraordinary lengths to keep even small promises. That was humanity's true strength. Not claws or armor or telepathy, but heart, the ability to see someone suffering and think, I can help. With that, the willingness to turn a little girl's Christmas wish into a movement that touched an entire station. The determination to stand up to bullies 3 times your size because someone needed defending. In the grand scope of the galaxy, with its ancient civilizations and vast empires and incredible technologies, humans were still finding their niche. But Ethan believed he'd found part of the answer. Humanity's place in the stars would be as the species that cared, the ones who stopped to help, the ones who kept their promises, the ones who believed in magic and then worked hard to make it real. And if that meant being known as the janitors of the galaxy, the ones who cleaned up messes and fixed broken things and made spaces better than they found them, then Ethan was proud to wear that title, because sometimes the most important thing in the universe wasn't how strong you were or how advanced your technology was. Sometimes the most important thing was simply being willing to deliver a letter to Santa for a little girl who believed in something beautiful. That was humanity. That was their gift to the galaxy. And Ethan hoped that in time other species would come to see that the greatest strength of all was the strength to care. Back on Harmony Station, Leia lay in bed, her medal from her father's ceremony hanging on the wall where she could see it. Her mother had tucked her in, and for the first time in a year, Leia had seen her mother genuinely smile, not the sad smile she'd been wearing, but a real one that reached her eyes. Leia whispered to the darkness, "Thank you, Santa, and thank you, Ethan." Somewhere in the universe, the magic of Christmas lived on, not in flying reindeer or miraculous toy production, but in the simple act of one person caring enough to keep a promise to a child. And that, in the end, was the most powerful magic of all. The next morning on Harmony Station, families throughout the residential sectors woke to find small gifts outside their doors. Nothing extravagant, just simple tokens, cookies baked by human volunteers, small handmade ornaments, notes wishing them joy and peace. No one took credit for the overnight distribution, but everyone suspected it was the work of Santa's elves, those mysterious volunteers who'd made the North Pole outpost possible. In reality, it had been Ethan and a group of dedicated volunteers working through the night to spread a little more joy. Because that was what you did when you believed in the magic of Christmas. You didn't wait for someone else to make miracles happen. You rolled up your sleeves and made them yourself. Commander Velis finding a plate of gingerbread cookies and a note thanking him for his support outside his quarters. Smiled to himself. He'd been skeptical when the humans first proposed their Christmas celebration, concerned it might cause division or confusion among the diverse population. Instead, it had brought everyone together in ways he'd never anticipated. He made a note in his log that human cultural traditions, particularly those centered on community and giving, should be encouraged and supported. They had a unifying quality that the station needed. Perhaps there was more to learn from these newcomers than he'd initially thought. As weeks turned into months, the effects of that one Christmas rippled outward. The scholarship fund continued to grow. More families from different species participated in the station's community programs. Incidents of bullying dropped as parents and teachers worked together to create a more supportive environment for all children. And Ethan continued his work as a janitor, pushing his cart through the corridors, keeping the station clean and functional. But now people greeted him by name. Children waved to him in the hallways, and once in a while, someone would stop him to say thank you, not just for keeping the station clean, but for reminding everyone what it meant to be part of a community. One day, several months after Christmas, Ethan was cleaning in Sector 7, the same corridor where he'd first encountered Leia and the Bullies. He heard a familiar voice call his name and turned to see Leia running toward him, her mother walking more sedately behind. Leia exclaimed breathlessly, "Ethan, guess what? I got accepted into the advanced arts program. They said my drawing showed exceptional promise." Ethan grinned, setting down his cleaning supplies to give her his full attention. "That's wonderful, Illa. I'm so proud of you. Are you going to draw more spaceships and stars?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, and I'm going to draw Santa and his elves, too, so other kids can see what they look like. Teacher Vara says I should document important events, and the North Pole outpost was the most important event. My life." Nessa reached them, placing her hand on her daughter's shoulder with obvious pride. "She's been drawing constantly since Christmas. Every wall in our quarters is covered with her artwork. I think we may have a future artist on our hands." Ethan looked at Nessa and was pleased to see the light had returned to her eyes. She looked healthy, vibrant, alive in a way she hadn't been when he first met her. The healing wasn't complete, probably never would be completely, but she was living again, not just existing. Nessa said softly, "Ethan, I wanted you to know that the scholarship fund helped 3 families last month, children who'd lost parents received educational support and counseling services. Tra's legacy is helping so many people. It gives meaning to his sacrifice." Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest. That's exactly what he would have wanted, I think, to help others, to make a difference. Illa tugged on his sleeve. "Ethan, can we do Christmas again next year, please? It was the best thing ever." He smiled down at her. "I think that can be arranged. In fact, I've already been talking with the other volunteers. We're going to make it an annual tradition, the Harmony Station Christmas celebration, and I think it's going to get bigger and better every year." Illa cheered, and even Nessa smiled broadly as they said their goodbyes and continued on their way. Ethan watched them go with satisfaction. This was why he did what he did, not for recognition or reward, but for moments like this where he could see the tangible difference his actions had made years later when people asked Ethan about his time on Harmony Station, about the legendary Christmas that changed the station's culture. He always told them the same thing. It started with a little girl, a letter to Santa, and a promise to deliver it. Everything else, all the magic and joy and community, grew from that one simple seed of kindness. That was the lesson he hoped others would take from the story. You didn't need grand gestures or enormous resources to make a difference. You just needed to care enough to keep your promises, to stand up for those who needed it, to believe that magic was real, and then work to make it happen. In the end, the galaxy would remember humanity not for their technology or their military might or their vast achievements. They'd remember them for their heart, their compassion, their unwillingness to look the other way when someone needed help. They'd remember them as the species who delivered letters to Santa, who stood up to bullies 3 times their size, who turned a child's Christmas wish into a movement that touched thousands. They'd remember them as the ones who proved that the greatest strength in the universe was the strength to care. And Ethan, a simple janitor on a space station far from Earth, had helped teach the galaxy that lesson, not with weapons or power or demands, but with kindness, determination, and the courage to keep a promise to a little girl who believed in something beautiful. That was humanity's true legacy among the stars, and it was a legacy worth celebrating. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one, and I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next